Welcome to day 3 of our week-long Realign with Our True Self Radical Authenticity Challenge. For those that do have the worksheets, look for the one that's got day 3 on it, and the title is Uncovering the Root of Misalignment. So go ahead and grab that now, and we'll get to that in just a couple minutes.
All right, you guys, so we're really going back into our childhood for this one. And this is where a lot of this stuff begins, where we start to form what's called an adaptive personality. In order to survive in our family systems, in order to gain approval, acceptance, and sometimes love, we needed to portray certain aspects of ourselves in order to gain approval. So these are where we learn a lot of the unspoken rules, either to speak out for yourself or to be quiet, to show certain parts of your personality, or these are the things that, what would the neighbors say if they knew this? Don't show other people these sides of yourself. And in order to, receive those accolades from your parents, like, oh, great job, you've done so amazing, we start to put on those personality types, and maybe we gained approval because of our academics or our appearance, or maybe it's a sport that you did in school and you notice, wow, mom or dad really gives me a lot of attention when I do this, so I'm going to put more effort into this. Whereas this other thing that I really love gets me in trouble, so I'm going to hide or diminish that part of myself. So, what we're going to look at is the ways in which this started taking root within our childhood so that we can notice. And then, once we notice it, those things can transform. We have an ability to look at the reality of where it came from. And when we do this, it loses its power, that hold that it's had upon us. So, let's go ahead and grab your worksheet now or your piece of paper, and Kevin will walk us through the worksheet.
Okay. So before we get into it, we'll just take a couple nice deep breaths just to get centered, get grounded. A lot of times when we're looking at these things, our system can start reacting. Our system can start saying, "Oh no, don't look at these programs. Don't look at the way that we are, because then you're going to be living an authentic life. Then you're going to be really living a life from the inside out. And then from your system's perspective, what will I do? What programs will I run to keep you safe and keep you protected?"
Well, think like any other time in history,
Yeah.
it's been very risky to be yourself, because what could possibly happen? You could be ostracized from your group, you could be banished, you could be murdered or killed. This is the safest time that we've ever lived in this time and place to be authentically you. So gosh, let's take advantage of the time that we live in stepping more into that authenticity with less risk than we've ever had in showing up.
Embracing the opportunity that's here. So for this one, we're just going to do three breaths. Nice relaxed abdomen, just like on day 1. We're going to do a 2-part breath, filling up our belly first, then filling up our lungs through our nose. Then we're going to let it all out through the mouth. So go ahead and find yourself a nice comfortable seat. Sit up nice and tall. Let it all out. Okay, 2 more just like that. Nice full inhale through our nose, all the way from the base of the belly to the top of the lungs.
I got stuck.
Let it all out. So when you hit your limit, take those extra couple of sips at the top. Just get a little bit more oxygen in there. So there's a lot of tools that we can use to get centered, get balanced, return to stasis, and our breath is just one of them. Getting outside, spending time in nature. There's a host of ideas and a host of ways that we can utilize these tools to get back to this place of balance. And even just those 3 breaths, I felt a little bit more clarity and expansion, a little bit more presence come into my space. So hopefully that you had a similar experience there. Okay, so piece of paper, pen or pencil, and or the worksheet if you've got it. We're going to go ahead and go through these together. So question number 1, we're thinking back to our childhood. What were things that your parent, guardian, your most impactful relationship praised you for when you were a child, when you were young? Give a minute. Go ahead
Before
and
you
think
start
about it.
writing, I would love for you to share your experience.
Okay. Well,
That that
so yeah,
one.
if you've got yours, go ahead and write, and you can listen to this as you're writing. But if you need a minute, then go ahead and take this one in. So I was in elementary school. I was in Little League, and it was a summer game. And my interpretation of my relationship with my dad at the time was one of basically conditional love. When I performed well in school, performed well in sports, even did my chores well, I was noticed, I was recognized. And so I learned at a very early age it's pay to play. You perform well and you get recognition, you get acceptance, you get love. So that then became a program that I ran for years. And this experience, it was at a ball field without a back fence, and I just roped a huge shot. In any other little league stadium, it probably would have been a home run, but there was no back fence, and so it went to the edge of there was like a wooded area, and it went all the way to the wooded area. I think it was either a triple or a inside the park home run. So make my way back to the bench. Yeah, my dad had come up to the bull or the backstop behind the bench, and he's like, "Great job, bud. That was a great hit." And instead of just being in the moment and saying thank you or yeah, that felt so good or oh man, that was the best, my mind flipped, and what I said was, "If you think that was good, wait until you get home and see how good I did on the lawn." I wasn't in a place to be able to just be. I wasn't in a place to be able to just experience the moment for what it was because there was always more. I could always do more. I could always get more attention. I could always find a different way or an additional way to get more from what from my dad. And again, this had nothing to do with him. He was doing his absolute best with the tools he had as a parent. I was coming into this equation or this experience with maybe expectations or certain assumptions or awarenesses that just energetically, I don't think were, in my perception, were being met. And that was one of the triggers that was leading me to pursue all of these additional aspects. Oh, good job on the test. If you think that's good, wait until you see how I do in the game. Oh, great job in the game. If you think that's good, wait until you see this. It was never good enough for me, which was the core of the issue. So this awareness has come after years and years of work and really moving through a lot of veils of perception, a lot of layers of resistance, a lot of layers of resentment. And it's not that we're all going to be there right away. So, again, this is a step by step process. We are all on our own journeys. We are all taking one step at a time. That's really the only way to go about life is one step at a time. We're getting new information, we're getting new insights every step of the way. And this process, this practice series we're in this week is just one of those steps for us.
So, what were the ways that you were praised when you were a kid?
What were some of the ways that you were praised? What were ways that you felt accepted or felt that you got love for,
Acknowledged.
acknowledged, outside of just existing? So go ahead and take a minute and go ahead and write your answer to that. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is what were some of the things that we were criticized for when we were little? What were some of the things that we got a short or a curt response from our parents for? This can be something that we did or didn't do. This could be something that we achieved or didn't achieve. Um, any number of things. We're all, our parents are running programs. Our parents are doing the best they can with the tools they've got. They're giving us the tools they've received because that, for by and large, is how we operate in the world. Going back to what Kelly shared about parents, teachers, religion, peers, society, it all combines to create patterns, to create frameworks of existence. I wouldn't say frameworks of thriving for everyone. Really, those are for us to cultivate and create on our own. And
But this is what you do to fit in. This is what you
That's
do
what we
to
do to
fit in
survive, to fit in,
to
to be
society,
accepted.
to
Yeah.
the family,
Yeah.
to whatever group or organization, and usually that's about staying safe.
Yeah. Not necessarily staying expansive and staying true to that inner knowing, that inner core of who we are. So, what were some things you were praised for? What was some things you were criticized for? Number 3, what were you told not to do? Whether it was verbal or nonverbal. This can just be something that you understood was a big no-no and we didn't do that. Or it could be something that was explicitly, given to you in the form of punishment or ridicule or, yelling. Things like, don't cry. You're okay, you're fine, dust it off. Don't you dare talk back to me. Things like that. What were things that you were told not to do? What were things that were not available to you as an expression?
Could be don't wear your hair like that.
Don't wear your hair like that.
I remember my mother told me that if I were to get a tattoo that goes against God, you have sullied your temple, and God would not approve of that. So these are rules in my family.
My dad was a little bit more subtle with mine. I've got one on my inner arm here, and it was like this. And I was at the kitchen table right after I got it. He said, "What is that? Is that arm hair, armpit hair?" I said, "No, it's a tattoo." And he just kind of looked at it. He said, "Well, you're going to regret that in 10 years."
And did you?
Nope. That was 20 something years ago.
Yeah. Do you regret it now?
No, not at all.
So what are yours?
So what are some that you had in your family? Okay, number 4. What are some ways in which you were too much? Could be you're too loud, too quiet. You could be too lazy, too heavy, too skinny, too much of a dreamer, not practical enough. What were some ways that you were too much for someone else? Again,
Let's keep this to childhood, though, rather
Yeah.
than later in life. So what about in your childhood?
because later in life patterns are just reflective of things we experienced when we were little. They manifest and they can augment and they can transform and change, but once we kind of peel back those surface layers of the differences in the experiences, they all go back to those early childhood rules that we got.
Yeah.
So what were some ways that you were too much? How about you?
Yeah, mine was like in teenage years. If you just lost a little bit of weight, if you lost 10 pounds, you'd be so pretty. And then I remember saying to my mother something like, you want me to have an eating disorder, don't you? And there was silence. So what that told me is, yeah, I'd prefer that you were skinnier and had an eating disorder rather than the way you are now.
Okay. So number 5 for our worksheet for today. If your parents or primary caregiver or primary relationship had it their way, what would you be doing now? What would you be doing for a living? What would you be doing for work? How would you be behaving? How would you look? How would you dress? What would your life be like? I mean, this is macro stuff. I mean, if a lot of times we're born into families that have certain ways of doing things set up. A lot of times we're born into families of lawyers or doctors or military or police or first responders or banking, whatever it is. A lot of times these things are passed down. Well, this is what I did. This is the way that I made my way in the world, and I know this way will keep my son or daughter safe, and so this is going to be their way as well. So what were some ways that your parents influenced that? And if they had their way, what would your life look like right now, exclusive of anything else? I think mine would probably be a corporate job.
30 years in
Something with some
retirement.
stability and some safety to it, which is interesting because that paradigm doesn't necessarily exist in today's day and age.
Yeah.
Coming from a parent who really cut their teeth in the middle of the last century on an industry and profession, there was that, almost 30 years and then the golden handshake at the end, and then you get your retirement.
Yeah.
And so that was the program that my parents were running. This is the way to do it. And I was born into a world that wasn't the same as that. And so it was really important. I feel like I had recognition of that fairly early on and just
Yeah.
saw like that I can't rely on that. So what can I rely on? Little bit was right here. I was like, well, if I can't rely on the structure, if I can't rely on the industry, if I can't rely on the business, I can rely on myself. And that was a crack in the window. That was a door slightly ajar that really started opening it up throughout my entire life, and it continues to expand to this day. Okay. And this one you don't necessarily have to answer right now. This one might be some food for thought or might take a little bit more processing. But when you've got a moment, go ahead and look over your answers for the day and see if you've gained any new insight. See if you've gained any new information, any new perspective or awareness about yourself from your answers. For example, did you feel bad that you weren't living up to the standards that your parents had? Is there guilt that you're carrying with you? Is there maybe scarcity or fear? Or did your pendulum swing in the other direction? You went counterculture. I don't care, Dad. I'm going to do what I want to do. Oh,
You
you know?
became a rebel. You did the opposite.
Right.
And do you think that was on purpose, like the attitude Kevin's talking about, or was it you
More
didn't even
subtle.
realize it until doing this exercise? Like,
Yeah.
whoa, look, I totally went opposite.
The opportunity in this exercise is that whether it was carrying the weight of these things with us or going counter of the things that we learned or were exposed to when we're little, it's still resistance to things outside of ourselves. Regardless of if we embraced freedom and went counterculture or if we carried weight with us, there's still resistance to things that we've experienced. And that resistance is part of the equation that keeps us stuck, keeps us fixed, keeps us finite, keeps us limited. So,
So if we're following what they want, then that would be resistance to what we want. And if we're going counter to that, because it's like, screw you, I'm going to do what I want, then it's still in resistance to what they want
right.
for you. You're pushing up against something rather than just being in the flow of who you are.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right, you guys. So when we become aware of why we look at those old patterns, then we have an opportunity for things to start to shift. Sometimes things shift just in the understanding. It's like those things are no longer hidden, they've been excavated. And when it's out in the open, it can lose its power. It's like, oh, you? Wow, okay. You're running the show? Not anymore.
It can be the realization can be the transformation.
Yeah. But there are also more tools than that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we need a little bit more of a push to expand and to break free of some of those blockages. So we will have an opportunity to go deeper into a lot of these ideas. We're having our 6-week Radical Living course, which starts on January 17th.
Mm-hmm.
And we dive into radical authenticity through radical balance, radical honesty, radical empathy, radical freedom, and with that comes responsibility. And we learn about the energy that permeates all things, radical energy.
And I think a good theme, one of the additional weeks that we look at in the course is radical acceptance.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And especially for today, I think that's a real cohesive theme for everything we've been talking about today. Is just it's accepting what is, because if we're in non-acceptance, that's another form of resistance. If we're not accepting of others being the way they are, or our experiences being what they were in the past, we're still creating friction. We're still creating resistance around these things. So these are tools and practices to move beyond the resistance, to move beyond that friction.
And it enhances every relationship in your life, especially the one that you have with you.
Because at the end of the day, that's where everything starts. The relationship with ourselves permeates and broadcasts to our relationship with everyone. And so all these practices are really radical inside out authenticity living from our core, from that wholeness that's, even though it might not feel like it, it's there. It's always been there. And what we're doing in these exercises is we're working on excavating the layers of sediment, the layers of programming, conditioning, reactions, beliefs that are working to keep us safe, but they're also working to keep us fixed and finite within our experiences.
Yeah. I mean, going back to that idea that in the past it was very risky to be a little bit different than others. You are what do they call it? The tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah,
Like if
in
you put your head
Australia.
up too high, it could be lopped off.
Yeah.
But we are very lucky now to be able to be in a place where we can have self expression that's real. And the cool thing about being able to connect through things like social media, one of the good benefits is that it allows us to reach out into different cultures, different places, different types of people. So if in your own little niche in the world you're not finding that you can be accepted for who you are, you can branch out, at least online,
Mm-hmm.
and find groups of people that are similar to you. And we have the opportunity, most of us, to move. Like, wow, maybe I'm seeing that there's a strong culture just like this over on this part of the world. I think I'm going to move over there and see if that feels more comfortable to me. So many of us have these chances and opportunity to find our unique group where we feel like we fit in. So, gosh, I was working with a spiritual medium not too long ago, a few weeks ago, and she shared with me that she really wanted to dress a certain way and like wear her crystals and things like that, but she was afraid. And I said, "Why are you afraid?" And she said, "Well, I live in a very small town, and I even belong to one of these government organizations where we have monthly meetings, and I feel that if I showed up like that, people would not respect me. They would they may think that I'm an outcast. They might not even like me." So, it's the risk is real, but I do invite you to just move beyond that risk and try it anyway. It's going back to that pie chart we talked about yesterday, the 33%. There are 33% that will absolutely adore you. They're like, "Oh my gosh, she's so cool. Look at the way she wears those crystals. I love her hippie vibe." There may be 33% that are disinterested. Meh, she's all right. And there may be 33% who straight out dislike that. They're like, "That is not my cup of tea. I don't like that at all." But it is not our job to kowtow to others. Our job is to figure out who we wish to be inside of ourselves. What is the way that allows us to feel the most joyful and peaceful inside? And if there are things that we would like to change to feel better within ourselves, great. But once we're established in who we are and we're feeling good about who we are, their judgments has nothing to do with us. We can't live ourselves for the judgments of others, live our lives, I should say. We're just showing up as ourselves, and people will judge, and that is okay. But the more we are uniquely us, the more we will find those people who actually do vibrate with what we're doing. It's like you find those people that you relate to in the world, and then it's real. It's a real relationship rather than finding those that we are trying so hard to fit in that we're presenting a certain image of ourselves, but then as time goes on and these little bits of our personalities start to pop out, others might go, "That's not who I like. I don't like this about you." So wouldn't it be better just to be totally yourself and authentic from the get-go, which will weed out those others that may not like parts of you. We're just being ourselves. Then those true people will find one another. They're like, "I love who you are. I love this, the way that you dress, or your unique personality, your sense of humor. This is cool." So you can actually find those real connections. All right, you guys. Also, if you have any
If
questions,
it's a
yeah,
question on anything we're sharing, just drop a question right below the video and we'll be sure to answer it.
absolutely. Stay on track with the videos if you haven't watched them
Mm-hmm.
yet. Make sure you're staying in line, watching them all. They are all important, and we are just really excited that you're here, and we're here to support you on your journey. See
Have a great
you
day.
tomorrow.
Have a good day of practice.
Bye, you
See you
guys.
tomorrow.
See you then.